Body image has a big role in sexuality. And when we don't love our body, it's really hard for us to ask other people to love our body. So this is a real important chapter about really getting into your body and ways that you can appreciate and love your body.
Hi there and welcome to Bonjour Babies channel. I'm Leslie Abraham. I am the founder of the pre and postnatal Bonjour Baby program. Today I have the pleasure to interview Debra Pascali-Bonaro. She is an international speaker, a childbirth educator, a doula trainer, a filmmaker, and an author. We are going to talk about her two books, The Ultimate Guide to Sex After Baby and Orgasmic Birth that she co-authored with Elizabeth Davis. Those two books are must-read. She's opening the doors to a new way of thinking about birth and envisioning it, and she is showing you how you can make birth a pleasurable experience instead of fearing it and thinking about it as a traumatic experience. In her book, The Ultimate Guide to Sex After Baby, she's taking you on her journey to reconnect with your partner and have more fun and sex and pleasure into your new parent's life. But I won't say more about that, and I'll let you discover everything into today's interview. Hi, Debra. Welcome to the channel and show. It's really a pleasure to have you with me today. You have agreed to come here and speak with me, and I can't thank you enough. I know you are extremely busy, but I really wanted to have the opportunity to talk with you. So thank you again for making that happening.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Great. So first, I want to just take a quick moment to talk about you a bit. I already made an intro about you, but I want you to tell me more about your background and how you ended up in the doula world. So can you let us know about that?
Sure. I mean, I know it for some people it sounds normal and other people are like, really? But I feel like I was born to be a doula. So I really feel like that was my calling. So even as a little girl, I was fascinated with birth. Like people like bedtime stories, I liked birth stories. So
Great.
This is something that was just always in my heart.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really good. I love that. Since, little girl, you knew that you wanted to be there.
Isn't it amazing? Because you often think, like, a lot of people say, like, what is my life purpose? But I feel like I just knew it from early on. And as I eventually became a doula, it just felt like, yes, this is what I've been trying to do all these years. And I wanted in my heart to be the doula, to really provide the emotional support and the comfort and be with one person. So it was only after my first birth that I thought, I need to start working with birthing people. And I became a childbirth educator. And the first few couples I taught, they invited me to their birth. And I remember thinking, oh, what an honor. Yeah. I was so touched and that they would invite me in. And I had no training. I didn't even know the word doula then. And I remember sitting in the corner and they asked me to take pictures. And I'm a terrible photographer, but I was so honored. I thought I'll try. So I would take a picture and smile and just keep telling them, you're doing great. And I'll never forget after the first birth, I was so touched to have been present at such a sacred, amazing moment. And when I got ready to leave, they grabbed me in this big hug and said, thank you. We couldn't have done it without you. And I laughed because I said, I didn't do anything. You did everything. I literally sat in the corner with thumbs up and smiling, and they said, yes, but it was your smile. It was your heart. we knew that if you felt everything was okay, we could trust the process. And they were surprised that even though they thought they would have a lot of support from their medical team, it was a full moon, busy night. And the team had so many people to care for that they literally just came in and out quickly and never could spend the time to hold a hand and do those things. And so it made me realize that we had this gap in our system, that we were missing this vital role. And it's been a real honor to be able to be at the beginning of the doula movement and to be a part of bringing doulas out, not only to clients I've been blessed to be with, but I've taught doulas in 40 different countries. So really amazing, right? How
Yeah.
life has a plan for you.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. And I like that you were at the very beginning, of the doula movement, because it's something that is new and not new at the same time, right? That always has been there, but maybe we tend to forget about it, or I don't know. But I like how it's coming back, and we all have to understand that it is really something different from a nurse and a midwife, and doula they have their role too in the birth experience. So yeah, that's great. So, and where can people find you online?
So a couple different places. I think the easiest to remember and certainly a lot of fun is orgasmic birth, because again, in this being called to something, I literally had a dream in my sleep one night that vividly showed me the film. And I knew at that moment that we needed a film to show that there's so much more available in birth than what we talk about. So orgasmic birth was born. And so orgasmicbirth.com can then link you, because my site for training for doulas is actually my name, Debra Pascali-Bonaro.com. And then I've gone on to create childbirth classes, pleasurable birth essentials, and that website is paintopowerchildbirth.com.
Okay.
But if you can't remember those, just remember orgasmicbirth.com and you'll connect to the others.
Perfect.
Thank you for asking.
Perfect. Okay, so let's dive into today's subject. You and I are going to talk about first a different point of view on birth that you have and that you introduced in your book, Orgasmic Birth. And then we'll dive into more the matter of intimacy and sexuality after giving birth, because this is really a question that a lot of new moms have. So let's begin with talking about your first book, so Orgasmic Birth, which is really like a must-read for every pregnant woman. I'm really advising like all my pregnant clients right now to read that, because it's a beautiful resource. It's really backed up by science, which I love, being a scientific in my background. I really love when you have like a scientific explanation of things, and it's for every pregnant woman or any woman that has a desire to have a baby, even like in a few months or in a few years, or maybe a second or third baby, because you depict the birth experience in a much different way than the conventional view that we have of it. And so it's not only necessarily speaking about birth at home, but how you can make birth a whole different experience, even in a hospital or birth center setting. And I really like that. It's about being empowered, learning to let it go, right? And transform this experience in a pleasurable experience, an orgasmic birth, as you're calling it. So, and after really reading this book, if you didn't think about it like that, it can really open your eyes on understanding that something is broken in the way we give birth today, really. And it's really empowering. This book is beautiful. So first, something that was mind-blowing for me was all the effects of the different drugs we can receive during the birth experience, and they can have on the birth experience itself, and how it can play on the mom's sensations when giving birth. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. And first, Leslie, I have to say all your words about the book, just thank you. You know, it feels so good when you create something. And I do want to honor that this is co-created with
Yes.
Elizabeth Davis, an amazing midwife, a good friend and co-author. So together, creating this was truly a labor of our love. So knowing that you're enjoying it so much and so many others are, we really appreciate it. So when we look at orgasmic birth, it's really, as you said, science-based. I like to say now, right? Like a scientific birth is a sexy birth.
Yeah.
And as we're really understanding, and Dr. Sarah Buckley, another friend and colleague, has written a lot about the hormones of labor. And we understand now that the same hormones that have to peak at the highest levels ever for the safest, most pleasurable, gentle birth are the same hormones that build and bring us to orgasm. And so when we see our sexuality as a continuum and part of birth, and that the same situations and feelings that we need to feel safe, to feel private, to feel unobserved must happen in both settings, in our sexuality and in birth, for us to have the most pleasurable, and I add in birth, the safest experience that's based on science. Then you can really begin to look at, like you said, how our common interventions that we often don't think twice about, actually, if you were to apply any of them in the middle of sexuality, you would go, no way, right? Like whether you're masturbating on your own, how many of you want to monitor an IV and three strangers in the room, or you're intimate with a partner, then you can begin to look at birth through this different lens. And when you see that anything that would disturb your intimacy will disturb your birth, you can begin to see that we're disturbing birth and making it longer, harder, more painful. And then one intervention dominoes to another. Because when you don't feel safe, then you get stress hormones rather than oxytocin, the love hormone. And then we give you oxytocin, but it's synthetic oxytocin, which can have other ripple effects for you and your baby. And when we use pain medication, like I think about, could you imagine making love and someone then giving you an epidural and saying, well, how are you enjoying the process? I don't feel it, right? So I want to say this, though, every intervention we have, including medication, has a time and place that it's beneficial.
Yeah.
So there's never blame or shame in any of this. I think we have to honor that no one should suffer in childbirth. And when pain becomes suffering, whether it's emotional or physical, medication can be a blessing. Certain people's lives are saved for mother baby at different times with interventions. But what I'm talking about is that we're overusing valuable resources that can save lives, and we're underusing our own ability to create the intimacy, the love, the pleasure of birth. And when we can find the balance, then we'll see a completely different paradigm, that I believe pleasure is everyone's birthright, and that we can be birthing with much more ease, love, respect, pleasure, and more people will use the word orgasmic birth.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I like that you add that, some of the drugs and medication and instruments that we're using during birth are, sometimes necessary, and doesn't mean that we shouldn't, use them at all. But, in a more safe setting, when there is no complication, we can maybe, begin to think in a different way. Definitely. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
And I do want to add that even when we need technology, when it's life-saving, we still can be adding love and pleasure and joy. Like we're seeing gentle, joyful, loving births in all settings. So there's a lot we still have to learn, and a lot we have to unlearn from some of the misinformation and the beliefs that we've been doing in medical practice the last years. And again, our providers have always done everything with the best intentions.
Yeah.
So again, it's really honoring. We need our doctors, our midwives, our nurses.
Yes.
They're incredible in the care they provide, but it's a system that needs systemic change.
I agree with you. I really agree with you. And so you're talking a lot about, surrendering, you and your co-author, letting it go, and breaking habits for a more enjoyable birth. That it is key to let all the hormones do their wonderful work and shift the pain to pleasure. So can you expand a little more about that? Can you talk to us a bit more?
Sure. I think there are so many things that get caught up in that. How do we change the whole paradigm, right? And so some of the first things is looking at what came before.
Mm-hmm.
So what stories have you heard? How were you born? What's the paradigm that you view as birth? And does that serve the pleasure model, or does that contrast it? And how can you address those points? The next is just what you believe you'll achieve. So starting to look at how do you shift your beliefs to more love, more pleasure. And a lot of that has to do with the language we use, because so much of the medical system uses an illness or a pain even terminology. The word contraction, for most people, equates to pain. And so if we use a language of pain, we manifest that. When we start changing the language to health and wellness, sensations, waves, everybody has their own language of health, wellness, and power, then you'll begin to feel it differently, because what your mind thinks, your body feels. That's been well documented in science. So once you've addressed the beliefs, you've really put your vision, what you want, you've changed the language to achieve that vision, then the next part, and I love this exercise in the book, is bringing your sexuality to birth. And Elizabeth is the one that created that wonderful exercise on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel about your sexuality? And knowing that if you are a 10, fantastic. And then the question is, how do you bring that into birth? But for most of us, that number's lower. Yeah. It may be you're a survivor of sexual abuse, and pregnancy or before is a time to really find deeper healing, because birth, as in our documentary, in our book, we talk about stories of survivors of sexual abuse that reclaiming their body in birth was the greatest healing they've ever achieved. And so having an orgasmic birth is accessible to survivors. It takes making sure you feel safe and respected and private with the right people. But what an opportunity to heal and go beyond to reclaim your body. Or if just your sexuality is mediocre, you never had good sex education, it's not something you've explored, whether it's shame or lack of knowledge. So this is the time to make it a 10. And when we bring our sexuality into birth and we look at ways that we feel safe in doing that, then you open up brand new aspects of birth that haven't been talked about in standard childbirth, that haven't been talked about for most people in preparing. And I think it's this combination and the fullness of honoring birth as physical, emotional, spiritual, and sexual. And when you can have good childbirth education that expands you into all of them, then you are ready to open to birth in amazing ways.
Yeah. Like what you're saying, it's a holistic thing. I'm all about holistic as being, a DO in my past life. Holistic as such, an importance to me, because there is not one thing happening, on its own. It's always like a combination of things, So I like that you're describing, birth as a holistic thing, because of course it's so important. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that we somehow left birth to just this cervix opening, as if it's like that cervix is not even connected to a body. We talk about 3 centimeters, 5 centimeters. I'm always saying, wait a second, there's a person. Do they have a name? Like, how are they feeling? Like,
I mean, birth is all about numbers. If you look at it, the cervix, the monitoring, the ABGA score of the baby, it's all about numbers. And no, there is like 3 real persons here. So let's take that into account. That's true. So, and something that you talk about in your book is how this kind of birth, or orgasmic birth, can make the baby mom partner relationship and bond even stronger. And that's very interesting. And I like that, the partner is really a part of it, because sometimes we focus too much on just the mother and baby, bond. And I was really amazed by that, because I really believe in the partner having a role in the whole pregnancy and, the birth by itself and the first few days of, baby. And in the book, you're showing that there is a whole chemical, hormonal explanation behind that. So can you touch a word on that too?
Sure. And I think it comes back to that intimacy, right? That when we're being intimate with a partner and we're co-creating hormones, it's actually deepening our sense of connection and love. So it's the same thing in birth. When we're feeling safe and private and unobserved, and we are connected in that loving way with our partner. I mean, birth to me is loving ourselves, loving our babies, loving our partners, just bringing all that love into the world. And when we birth in love, it's going to think about the baby. They're bathed in our hormones. So when, the partners are together in love, the baby's feeling that as labor's going on and gestating into the world. And I think what we don't understand is the damage we've done the other way. When birth is challenging, when people are separated, I mean, sometimes even partners just bearing witness to all the technology have their own trauma that doesn't get addressed. And that causes gaps in relationships, gaps in closeness at a time that you want the most closeness of your life. So I think we're just really at the tip of the iceberg in realizing that pregnancy itself and birth is a very sensitive window in our lives. And we have an opportunity to make those bonds stronger and develop relationships. And boy, do you need those. We're going to talk later about postpartum, but postpartum's our highest highs and our lowest lows all in 1 hour and 1 day. And so when you go into it with relationships that have the optimal ability to be connected in love, I think that's what nature intended. But sadly, our current system can break that down, where people don't feel like this is the right environment to be kissing or touching or whispering in your ear. We've got to return that. We've got to make home birth in the hospital so that people are not only feeling safe, but they're encouraged to love through labor.
And if you think about it, just giving birth is like, it's the paramount of love, you're creating a life. So it should be the most intimate and loving moment between the partner, because it's the consecration of your love. You're having a baby, it's really like the top of the mountain. So yes, putting, even though we give birth in the hospital, but really understanding that this strong bond should be happening during the act of birth. Definitely.
Yes, and it's essential for mother-baby bonding. The baby feels what the parents were feeling in labor. And the data, and I love this, 2 of my mentors were Dr. Marshall Klaus and Dr. John Kennel. They've both passed on now, but they dedicated their life to parent-infant bonding. And they really showed the significance of that skin to skin, that the birthing person holds the baby, both for body temperature, we now know for microbiome, for breastfeeding, for bonding. But they also show that within the first hour or 2, having that partner be skin to skin for at least 15 minutes translates to an almost an hour more every day of that partner being involved in parenting. So we really have the science that this is a sensitive window. And when we help birth in any setting to be gentle and loving, we're ensuring that bond carries on.
Definitely. Definitely. So on that note, let's dive into sexuality now. We talked about birth. So because, the first few months postpartum, it can be daunting for some to have sex again, just, completely out of the picture because there is so much to do with baby and all of the mom's attention is derived to the baby. And so having sex with her partner can be like the last thing on her list, right? So, so in your second book, you're really talking about that. And so you are taking the mom and her partner throughout the journey, right? And so you are using the acronym pleasures to help them. So I'll let you explain to us, what do you mean with this acronym?
Yeah, and thank you, Leslie, because I love pleasure, right? So I thought, okay, how do I weave pleasures into postpartum? And I thought, okay, an acronym, although we do have real pleasure in there.
Yes.
First P is preparing your roadmap. You have to have a vision of where do you want to be, right? Like we can't set out to go on a destination if we don't know where we're going. And I share in the book that part of the reason for me writing this is that my first marriage had a lot of stress around new parenting. And this is the book I wish we had, because we never talked about what our mutual final destination was and really talked about sexuality and the issues we were having. So the analogy for me was like we hopped on two separate boats with an assumption that we'd set sail and somehow end up at the same destination. But sadly, we didn't plot a course and we just went separate, and it did end in divorce.
Yeah.
And I think that for me now, it's that people are conscious to give voice to, okay, this is going to be a really bumpy ride for a little bit, but where do we want to be? What's kind of that preparing for our roadmap?
Yeah.
But second, the L in pleasures is losing yourself, because so often I remember feeling like I'm just a mother now. Like, where is Debra in here, And I'm sure my partner felt like that too. And some of that's normal as we transition through this major rite of passage, especially with the first baby, but it can happen with subsequent too. And so it's really, for me, recognizing that you're going to be a good parent. I always say we strive to be our best, but don't set your soul on always being the best, because then we let ourselves down. So finding how do you balance kind of parenting and who you are and who you're becoming. The E is endings or new beginnings, and that honors the birth that we've talked so much about, because I really see that when people have pleasurable, ecstatic, orgasmic births, they go into their postpartum relationship already from kind of this good place, and often the sexuality gets better. When people have challenging births that become traumatic, or they feel quite disappointed in the experience, maybe it's the care they received, they were disrespected, or their choices weren't honored, they tend to take this in, and that can become a disconnect for them with their sexuality and their intimacy. So it's really important, whatever birth was for you, that you name it, you speak it, and if you need to, you heal it. And a really important piece to take on. Step 4, the A in pleasures, is appreciate your new body. And I look back personally, and I remember that postpartum, all I wanted to do was get my old body back.
Mm-hmm.
And why I was so focused in the back, I didn't appreciate where I was. I never once thanked my body for growing and birthing a baby. I never once looked in the mirror and said, "You're amazing. You're a gorgeous mother." Instead, I didn't even want to look in the mirror. I would just kind of look down and go, "Oh my goodness, what happened here?" And what I've learned is that body image has a big role in sexuality. And when we don't love our body, it's really hard for us to ask other people to love our body. So this is a real important chapter about really getting into your body, and ways that you can appreciate and love your body. I've had so many great stories in there. The S is ignite your senses. Sexuality is every sense. Really thinking what you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you hear, what you feel. And so going into how do our senses engage with pleasure, with intimacy, with love. The U, important for me, is understanding that sex begins between our ears in communication.
Yeah.
I think if we're not communicating, right? Like so many times, foreplay with a new baby begins by a couple comments said in the kitchen or someone doing the dishes, right? It's a completely different set of what foreplay is postpartum. And it's a lot to do about communication. 7 is rituals, and that's the daily pleasures. I truly believe that we must live a life of pleasure wherever we are in life. In our joyful times and in our deepest challenges, we need our pleasures more than ever. And so creating a list of 10 to 20, 3 to 5 minute nuggets, and every day doing 3 of them. And so for everyone listening, like that would be my advice today, wherever you are in life. And when you can do that and you have that pleasures treasure chest, then you'll be able to pull from them postpartum. And notice I said short, because postpartum, 3 minutes is like maybe all you're going to get sometimes, right? And that's not to say that you shouldn't find time for longer pleasures, and sexuality can be pleasures, but hopefully they're a little longer than 3 minutes. So step 8 is energize your sexuality, and that's really to unlock your creative energy, because our sexual energy is our creative energy. So if you feel postpartum your creative energy is down, it's really tied a lot to your sexual energy is probably low. And some of this is education. I think a lot of us, I query people all the time, and I mean, it'd be interesting, Leslie, do you feel that your education in school gave you really good sexual education?
Not at all. We didn't, I grew up in France. Still, we were pretty open about that stuff. But I remember it was always on the planning of school. But they was always telling us, we'll see how you will behave, during the year, and maybe we'll do some, sexual education. I don't know if it was like a taboo thing, or, or because we're younger, they were like fearing that we were like quirky, or I don't know. But I think maybe 1 year I had sexual education, but that was all. It's really amazing.
Amazing. Like, it's an essential part of every single human being. Like, that's how we all got here, and like sex is an important part of our life, so why aren't we talking about it? And then the second part of the question would be, do you feel your family? Some people are blessed their family really gave them good education. Did your family?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. My mom, we always had books at home explaining us, sexuality, what it was, and the notion of pleasure and love with that. So I can say like that my education was coming way more from my family and my mom, explaining us these things, rather than at school where we barely learned anything, to be honest. Yeah.
But how lucky you had family, because when I do this all around the world, I would say less than 20% of the people have the education from family. So that leaves 80% of people that have never really gotten good education about their bodies, their sexuality. So that chapter is really, it is one chapter, but it's a huge one of really getting access to all that education, because that way you can really explore and expand and enhance your sexuality. And the last one is sexy wild woman. So at the end, if you've done all those pleasures and really opened up this treasure chest for yourself, we hope that you can celebrate that even though you're postpartum, you've come to a whole new place in how you feel about your body and your sexuality. And I hope that has really impacted not only your creative ability, which makes you a better parent, makes you better in the workplace, but I hope your relationship
Yeah.
is really enhanced. And that's what I'm seeing in the people that have read the book and taken the journey and those that have joined our classes.
Oh, that's great. That's super interesting. And, that's a whole program. And so, I know that you have a whole course on that topic, right? So, who is it for? Is it for only, the new moms, or is it, even for couples that didn't have kids yet? So, how do you position your audience here?
Yeah. So the audience is mostly geared for women or people identify as women. So we hope that they'll talk to their partners, but we're really creating a more intimate circle where we're talking about women's bodies and women's sexuality. But it is definitely, it's for people before they come pregnant, people that are pregnant, because before pregnancy and pregnancy, you have more time for this, right?
Yes.
Have postpartum women joining us, and it's for them too.
Yeah.
They usually are finding to get that consistent time to work through the steps is a little bit harder unless they have a great partner or amazing family support.
Yeah.
But it is for anyone that is in that childbearing process or thinking about it. And we've had in our last class people whose even children were 5 years old, and sadly they had felt that for the last 5 years they just have not had the connection they really wanted with their body and their partner, and they felt it literally transformed so many aspects of their life.
Good.
So it is called Sex After Baby, and it's on our orgasmicbirth.com website. There's a tab at the top that's Sex After Baby, and you can get both our book there, and if you take the class, then the book comes free with it. And we are taking people on the wait list right now. So we hope to be opening another course September, October.
Nice. I will add the link below the video anyways. Last question, because I know you have to run, because that's a question that I have a lot, from my clients. When can I safely have sex with my, partner again, and how to do it, because I'm scared. There's really a fear around that. Like, as we said, it has to do with body image, but also the pain that, is linked to the hyper instrumentalized type of birth that we have today. So how can one shift her story when she had this kind of, conventional birth, I would say, and how can she feel empowered again with her birth story to feel more at ease, to share that intimacy with her partner?
Yeah. And this is such an important question because we're all unique, right? And it depends on the birth we had. It depends on how our body's healing. Because I have some people that at 2 weeks postpartum, they're just so can't wait to be intimate and have intercourse. And it feels good to them. And I've worked with other people that at 6 months, it still doesn't feel safe for them to begin. And so I work with them on other ways of finding intimacy and connection. So I think it's important that each person really honors your own body wisdom. What is your body saying about it? And communicating that clearly with partners so that they understand it's not that you don't love them. It's not that you're not seeking intimacy and connection, but it's that your body is not feeling ready. Because sometimes without good communication, again, partners feel that it's them or that this is forever, we're never having sex again. Where if you can really be articulate, then partners can be compassionate and really list the other ways. Because I find most postpartum people really need a lot more foreplay. Like I insinuated, like doing the dishes, whispering 3 things of why you love me during the day, and then using lubrication. Even if you've never used it before, often in healing and breastfeeding can make us extra dry. So again, it's not a reflection on not being turned on by your partner. So articulate that. It's our hormone shifting, that having extra lubrication and taking extra time. Maybe you need a full body massage to turn on, where prior to a baby, just the thought, in 3 minutes you were ready to go. So there really is a lot of shifts going on, and it's really getting to know your body again, articulating that well to your partner, and taking time. And I know this is hard when a baby could wake up and cry at any minute. So sometimes that's also playing a part in your ability to really come into the moment and be present with intimacy. But there is no right time. There is the right time for you, and each one of you will know that when you really connect to your body and communicate that.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's a beautiful message to put out there. Everybody is different. There is no, guidelines. You do you, and just make sure to communicate with your partner. I think for everything and anything, anyway, in a relationship, it's so important to be able to articulate and communicate whatever is going on. So thank you for that. Thank you so much, Debra. That was a beautiful conversation that we had together. I'm so glad that I was able to interview you on those two books. And I really encourage anybody that is listening to, go and check it out, and check out your course as well, because I know it can be like a great help for, women and partners, as we say, to really, be empowered with their relationship again and take control of it, and feel that connection again, because sometimes we get lost in the process, definitely. So thank you again, Debra, for today. It was lovely having you.
Oh, thank you, Leslie. I really enjoyed it too. It's wonderful to have this time with you and with everyone that's joined us.
Perfect. Thank you, Debra. Bye.
Bye.